And hello.
Hello.
It's Sunday evening. It's 10 o'clock in London and it is 5 o'clock over there in Virginia. How are you, Val?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right, love. Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm glad to be here with my fellow co-host. What's your week been like?
Busy, windy, chilly, all that good stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah, it's been pretty cold here actually. Really, really super cold. But we haven't had any snow down in London yet. And it's weird, isn't it, when we're at 5 hours in between each other. It's not that far at all. And yet you've had a lot of crazy weather going on, like weather warnings and everything, haven't you?
Oh gosh, the wind has about blowed us away up here.
Is that like being in Kansas and seeing
It is.
Noise?
You look, I mean, my cats will sit in this chair and look out the window and try to catch the leaves.
Yeah.
As they blow past.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the ocean. The wind outside sounds like the ocean. So.
Yeah. And I see we're both wearing red, which is really, we've not even said what colors we're going to wear. And here we are wearing red.
Yeah, it's just a red day, I guess.
It's always a red day on Wicked Women, isn't it?
It is.
Bit of a tough topic tonight, dominance, because we covered a couple of months ago now, I think it was dominant women. And that was definitely about a little bit more on the kinky side of things, also about strong women. But I had a lot of feedback about, well, you know, could you cover dominant as in people in your life, someone who talks to you perhaps in a dominant way, controls you, perhaps nothing to do with the kinky side of things. So this is why this topic has come up. And I think you and I, we can both say that we're well aware. We've both been in those situations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people have. And some people may enjoy that, you know, in a relationship. I think there's people on, you know, the side where they like that situation, you know, that they feel comfortable in that situation,
being in control.
Right. There's some that feel like it needs to be 50-50, like everything needs to be 50-50. And, you know, that there's no give or take. And then there's the opposite, you know, those are that like their partner to, you know, be dominant, or, you know, they work better in a situation where they have a dominant person telling them what to do. So, you know, I guess it just depends on the person.
I think you're right. I think some people feel very comfortable in a controlling way because it either makes them feel safe, or they get the reassurance they need, or it just makes them feel in control. And some people are perhaps comfortable more in a submissive, or, you know, I find myself in a strange situation because I was and have been quite a confident lady. And then I found myself in situations where my control and confidence and dominant side was completely taken from me by a relationship, twice over actually, which really almost destroyed me as a person. And we, you know, I think we both know that. And we're going to speak from experience because I've got two other ladies waiting to come and join us. And I'm absolutely thrilled that I actually have a Brit, a lady Brit to join me tonight.
You're not outnumbered today.
Usually it's the lovely Canadians or Americans, but we have a lovely lady joining me she's actually from Bournemouth, and although she's in London for one night only, no, she's in London. I'm going to bring her in. So let's say hello to Tracy. How you doing?
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi.
Looking very smart.
Thank you.
I'm also going to bring in our lovely other lady who's been sitting so patiently. She too is from the good old United States of America, and this lady I know has got so much to talk about and so much to give, because I've been getting to know her, and she blows my mind with information she's got, and I'm like, where have you been for the last 20 years of my life? So I'm going to bring her on. Please welcome Sabrina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, we are very, very welcome to have both you and Tracy. You know, me and Val, we like to shake it up.
That's good. It's important to do that.
That's right.
Keep things interesting.
Yeah, and also because you all come from different backgrounds and different situations, and I'm going to start, you know, I always start, but I'll ask with Val first of all, my lovely co-host here, and also we've chatted so much in our time together about our experience. What was one part of your life, Val, when you felt that you had lost your worth and your power and control?
Definitely my first marriage. I mean, it got to the point where I couldn't paint my wall in my own house without permission, you know, and I think in my different relationships, it's been kind of the same, maybe on a different level. You know, if you wear something, you know, what are you wearing that for? You don't need to be wearing that. You know, if you 5 minutes past what you normally get home, you know, you're late. Where are you been? Doesn't take that long to, you know, I think and honestly, I haven't had that many relationships. So in all of my relationships, except the one I'm in now, they've always tried to, which I always say, put me under their thumb and kind of, you know, make me be what they want instead of what I am.
And did you find that you look back now of when you gave, obviously your power was taken from you, and you get, and it was, you know, whether you gave it, because we all give it sometimes without even knowing we're doing it, we give it, it's like have it, back now and think that could never happen to me again.
Yeah, I think it took me years after I was divorced to get my, I don't know, it sounds like I went crazy, but to get myself back, to get my old self back.
Yeah.
And once I did, I was at peace, and I, you know, I swore I'd never let anybody do that to me again.
Yeah, I mean, I understand.
Maybe completely. That's why I am the way I am now.
Just to explain to someone, we don't mean to talk over each other, but sometimes there is a lag on StreamYard, so we can't always hear the other person, so we think that we're speaking. So we're not being rude and talking over them. We just get that lagging. For me, I've been in 2 relationships and been in situations in my life due to my health where I completely lost my power and control, and I didn't have, you know, I couldn't do anything because my body was so ill. I couldn't get the control back that I wanted. My brain was like, want to do this, want to do that. My body was going, no. And then there was the situations where I've been in relationships, and they always don't start that way. They always start in a situation where you think you're being lulled in, and the next thing you know, it starts off with something small or a comment or behavior. And the next thing you know, you find that you're like, I'm frightened to say something. I better not say that. I better walk on tiptoes. I don't want to lose them. If I say that, this is going to happen. So I too have been through that as well. And I'm going to come to Tracy and say, was there a situation in your life where you felt exactly the same as what Val and I are talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to be a very dominant person until I met my second husband. Lovely to start with. As soon as we got married, he turned super dominant, as in controlled everything, controlled what I wore, where I went, who I went with, even my job, controlled everything. When I came out of that relationship, ironically, I chose a guy that was very similar to my husband because I was so used to it and so used to being beaten down that that's what I thought I had to be in. I then came out of that relationship and found someone who was super passive, so passive that we never once had an argument in 13 years. Now, I actually didn't like that. Not that I liked a really dominant man that was violent, but I actually didn't like the passive relationship because I felt like the dominant one, and I personally don't like being dominant now. So, you know, in the end, it was a case of I almost felt like I was wearing the trousers in the relationship. And that to me doesn't work either. For me, it needs to be a mix of both.
Right.
I need to be allowed to be myself and be as dominant as I want to be, but I also need someone that has the balls, that wears the trousers, that can be the man. I think very much in any relationship, if you've got one that's massively dominant and one that's massively submissive, the submissive one's just going to shrink away and disappear.
Mhm.
And that it'll be all about what the dominant one wants. You know, I am very submissive in that I don't really like to argue and let down so far that I think, in which case I will then speak. I'm not a complete pussycat, but I just can't be bothered to argue with people. So now I think I've got a bit of a balance, which is nice. I wouldn't want to go back to either. I want someone who's kind of.
And when you lost your power, when you lost your, you know, when the control was taken from you, how did it make you feel?
I didn't notice it going. I didn't notice.
Good point.
Yeah, it was almost done by stealth, because with my husband that turned super dominant, he didn't happen till after I'd married him. So it was more a case of I'll just shut up to make life easier because I don't want a hard life and nobody does. So I didn't really notice it going.
But I'm sorry.
No, go on, Val.
I think I know in my case it was we tend to, when we get away from one, we do tend to go to the same kind of person again because we're so used to it.
Yes.
Yes. And it feels almost odd to have someone who doesn't act like that.
Yes. Yeah, it does. You almost feel like you've lost what you're used to. I think you do get very used to being dominated, but it beats you down, so you leave. Then you find someone else who's also dominant. They beat you down, so you leave. And then I went for the complete opposite, and that didn't work either. So,
Sabrina, obviously you're listening to all our experiences, and this is only just the tip of the iceberg, because there's many women out there probably listening to this, and guys, because I want to say this is, obviously we are Wicked Women, so we're talking predominantly about women, but there are people, that male or female, that will listen to this today and know exactly what we're saying, because they will see episodes and shadows in that. Can you talk about something that happened to you and how you lost your power?
Sure. So I was in a relationship with somebody through some of my college years, and they were sweet, wonderful. They loved to dance. That's how we met, was ballroom dancing. Everything was wonderful until I started to, realize that some of my friends were pushing away, and some of my family started feeling like he wasn't really the best person for me. And I thought maybe they were just being judgmental because he was Muslim and Indian. And so for a while there, I was really trying to prove a point that they had the wrong idea about him. And I married him in the end. And everything similar to you, Tracy, kind of just went downhill from there. I was in a very controlling, manipulative marriage that led to me being really isolated and essentially feeling powerless to control my own life. And it took 2 years for me to finally wake up and smell the flowers or smell the roses and to say, this is enough. I'm not who I am anymore. I'm not happy. And this isn't how I want to live the rest of my life. So I filed for divorce. And luckily, he didn't try to hold on to me very hard. So yeah, it was a terrible experience, but an experience nonetheless that I can apply to my future relationships.
Yeah.
And how did it leave you? Like, I mean, how long, when you came out, because how long did it take you to get back? And did you find yourself in another relationship as time went on?
Yeah, within like 6 months, I started dating somebody who was actually a psychologist or psychiatrist. And we did a lot of exploring of relationship dynamics through text, through various different authors' books like Wired for Love by Stan Tacton, or Estee Perel's Mating in Captivity. So we could better understand ourselves and what we need from a partnership. And it was through that process of really going internally and realizing what I needed out of a relationship and what was healthy, what was not a secure, functioning relationship. I started to understand myself better. And I think that probably took a couple of years. Yeah.
I think it's also true, is a point that Keith's brought up here. Once the ring goes on, they take their mask off. That could be said both for men and women. But I would say sometimes it doesn't even take the ring. You start to see that person, I think when you meet someone, there's always that big effort, isn't there? There's that big effort and investment from them. They're the best version of themselves. And do you know something that Tracy and I, were chatting about earlier on, and we were saying, you see the best version. And then as time goes on, sometimes it drops quicker. And sometimes it takes a while. For me, when I was in that abusive one, it took 9 months to see. And by then, I'd been lulled in, I've been lulled into that false sense of security. And I was like, oh, he didn't mean to have a go at me. He didn't mean to shout at me. He didn't mean to stand there and berate me in my face. And, little by little, I took more and more and more. And I felt like, Wendy, wake up, wake up. I wanted to slap myself and say, stop this, wake up. And I think what you describe, all of us are describing, is the fact that we seem to pick, not all of them, but we seem to pick unconsciously, maybe subconsciously, whatever, the same type of guy. What is it? Why is it we can't break this pattern, Val? Oh, your mic's off, love. Put your mic on.
Sorry. I thought I heard a visitor a minute ago, so I turned it on. Or turned it off. I think honestly it took me 2 marriages and 2 failed relationships to break the habit and to switch the outcome. But it took years to get myself back, even after that. My first husband, we were together like 6 years before we got married, and then married 14 years. So the last 12 years of our marriage just kind of, but I stayed for 12 years longer than I should have, because I took part of the responsibility. And I tried for that long to make things different.
Sabrina,
Can I ask questions?
I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm curious if you noticed a similarity between those 2 men that you were with, if there was something about them that you were drawn to beyond the controlling aspect of it. Was there anything about it?
my first husband, I started dating him when I was 16. Then, we got married. We're married 14 years, had 2 kids, all this. When I divorced him, I was in such a bad place mentally that I think I jumped on the first person that showed me any interest in a positive way. And he turned out to be almost worse than the first one. When I divorced him, I got into another relationship, and I was with him for 5 years, again, thinking, it's part my fault, and I can change him.
It's a good point, though, that Keith writes, because I think after we've had so many bad relationships, we get used to the drama. We get used to things like that because, I've had a lot of conversations like when you get a good relationship, a normal relationship, a relationship without any stress, without any drama and stuff like, it's like, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with them?
Well, that's not our normal.
I know.
We're so used to the bad that we think something's wrong if we're not getting that. If, we think something's missing. But it, once you find yourself again, the one that's been, the one that's underneath the person that's been belittled and been, talked down to and abused, for so many years, it's hard for her to climb back out, and you take things that other people say as this with the same intention as your past, and you have to let that go because everybody doesn't act the same way.
Tracy, you and I have had this conversation before, isn't it? You get so used to the bad, the crap, the drama, that, it's, we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. We've had this conversation. What's your feeling about that?
It's quite a tough one because, as I say, for me, it takes a while for you to realize you're in that situation. It's super hard to get out of that situation. I think you become comfortable with being dominated after a while as well, which is quite a dangerous place to be. There's a time and a place for dominance in a relationship. I think for me the most important thing is get out if you don't like how it is, because quite often with a dominant person as well, you can't even reason with them. It's quite hard, and I think while I went from one dominant one to the next dominant one, I then went to one that was completely the other way, which didn't work either.
It's that balance, isn't it? It's I know what you mean, because you come out and you're like, that's it, Sabrina, I'm never going to do it again. I'm never going to get involved with someone like that again. I see the signs, it's not going to happen to me. And then you think, oh my God, when you write about trauma, that's an interesting point, because I would imagine the trauma would actually make us not want to get into another one. Bring up that point.
9 times out of 10 you can't see it initially, so by the time you're in it, it's too late. But it's that kind of personality that you've gone for.
Bring up what you mean by that, Sabrina, what you wrote.
Okay, so remember how I went into a huge internal research for understanding myself better, especially in relationships, because I had so many failed relationships. I also read a book fairly recently, actually, about trauma, and there's a great book called Reinventing Yourself, and it helps you to identify what traumas you experienced as a child and what that can interpret to, or how that will show up as an adult. And for me, I personally had childhood trauma relating to abandonment and sexual trauma. And so I had both parents, one a narcissist mother and a alcoholic father. So emotionally deprived is another pitfall that he kind of coins it or terms it. So I've found through listening to this book that people who experienced similar traumas were winding up in relationships with people where they were essentially picking people who would only ever give just as much as what they would get from a parental figure, because that's what they're familiar with. That is what feels safe, weirdly enough. And so when you find, like, I've tried to date people that are actually very healthy, wonderful human beings, nothing wrong really with them. I mean, sure, everybody has their quirks, but I found that I would, at a certain point, like a switch would get flipped and I would feel almost revolted by them, even though they were actually perfectly healthy and who I should be with. I was only ever drawn to the emotionally unavailable, the person who was going to remind me and make me feel like I felt when I was growing up with my parents. So it sounds a little weird, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, because I mean, my dad, unfortunately, he had lots of affairs when he was married to my mum, and it was always my fear that I'd marry my father, you know, or I saw my brother with women, and you know, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to date anyone like that. And I think I absolutely looked for someone completely different, and indeed I did find someone completely different. And I was very, very different. If I saw anything, that was it. I was gone. I was about 32, 33 when I got into that abusive relationship. I knew there was something there, I couldn't put my finger on, but I had so much disgust with myself because my marriage had failed. I felt a failure. I'd let myself down. I'd hurt my ex-husband, even though he was like, you know, it's you know, it's not like that. I got into something and I watched my self-esteem, my confidence, my worth go down the toilet. I also was spoken to like a piece of dirt. I was treated like, you know, Tracy and I were talking about this through this week, like crumbs, breadcrumbing, grateful for all the good times, everything that I was shown. And then became, for me, the physical side of things as well, you know, like it wasn't just the mental abuse, it became physical as well. And it wasn't always what people think, you know, you get a slap, or it was more subtle than that. You know, fractured my thumb, pushed down the stairs, you know, hands around your throat. It's very, very different. And he was an alcoholic as well. So I was constantly juggling, oh my God, has he had a drink? You know, and I put myself through that for 4.5 years. And I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Why aren't you getting out of this? And it was like, because you deserve it. Because somewhere in my head, I believed I deserved it because of my marriage failing. And this is what you get for letting a good man go. You got to suffer. It's terrible. Some of the things that we tell ourselves. Do you not agree?
Absolutely.
I think with the breadcrumbing, you say, you live for that one little nice nugget that you're getting off that person that is so dominant and so horrible. When they give you one little bit, you think, oh, amazing. When you're with someone good, you kind of take it for granted, because it's there all the time. But when you're with someone that's super dominant, and when they give you that you're desperate from them, you think, oh my God, they're amazing. Yeah. And that's what we need to get out of for the cycle, is appreciating one nugget of nice bit for 50 wrong.
And they're very subtle. I mean, I'm sure there's guys out there and lots of women that will understand where we're coming from. It is so subtle. It's not like you have the first episode and you're like, wow, where did that come from? Yeah. It's very subtle, and it's normally mental and emotional. And I want to bring up just some points here. about dominant behavior. And one of the things I brought up was some of the signs to look for if you're in that scenario. So you can have things like impatience. Someone becomes very impatient with you. All of a sudden you're a pain. You're a pain to them. It's like they're snappy, they become impatient. Why aren't you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. They can also be very manipulative. They can, well, if you loved me, you'd do this, or why aren't you doing this? Or why are you doing it like that? It's how they talk to you. So you then become very like, oh, okay. And it makes you feel quite small. There can be a lot of egotism from them. So like they have very big self-confidence. They think they're the cock of the hoop. And you are just not. Bluntness, saying things just as it, there's nothing wrong with bluntness, nothing wrong with that at all. But again, it's how you use it. And also being aloof, starving you of affection, starving you of attention, affection, breadcrumbing, gaslighting you. One of my favorite one was like, I never said that. I don't know where you got that from, but I never said that. You must be making that up, because I never said that at all. And I was like, in the end, I was questioning myself.
That's what they do. No matter what happens, it's your fault, not theirs. Yeah. They could go out and kill somebody, and if you confront them on it, they'll turn it around to where it was you, it wasn't them. It was because like you caused it.
And at the moment, we're talking about the negative side of being dominant. There is also a positive side of being dominant, which we will come to as well. Sabrina, and Tracy, you've both been in situations like Val and I have. If you could give any advice to any women out there or anyone listening to this, what would you say? I'm going to come to Tracy first. What signs would you say there would be the ones to look for, and what they could do if they're in that situation right now?
I can only talk from the signs that I've personally seen, but it's when they start to question things you're doing, making you feel like you're in the wrong for doing something that to you is perfectly normal. Not understanding that you're a separate person to them. You need to have an individual character. I always think that if someone can't comprehend that your thinking may be different to theirs because you're an individual person, then that to me is the biggest red flag of someone that is too dominant to listen. I don't mind someone that's dominant at all, because I'm not, and I'm not argumentative, and I'm actually fairly submissive, but I do have I teach. So for me, I can be very dominant. And I am opinionated. But for me, if someone is showing that much of a red flag fairly early on in a relationship, then I think for me, it's enough of a red flag that I would then have to leave. Because if they can't appreciate the fact that I'm a different person to them, I have a different opinion to them, and they can't say to me, well, okay, I totally understand your opinion. This is my opinion. Agree to disagree. That's the give and take that I think most of us need in a relationship. We are bad as ladies at ignoring red flags, and that can lead to that can lead to a snowball of a very unhappy relationship.
Sabrina,
I think there's three things that come to mind right away. If you're feeling isolated from your friends and family, if they are controlling who you're seeing, if they are tracking your location. I had my ex-husband ask to do, where on your iPhone you can find your friends and it can track to see where your friends are. Well, he used it to be able to see when I was leaving work, where I was going. I would also say, if you stop doing the things that you love to do that bring you joy. I stopped dancing, and that was the one thing that brought me a lot of joy. And so what I did to get through this and to finally kind of see the light, and this is my recommendation to the ladies out there, is that, or men, either way, find the closest person to you that you trust. That's obviously not them. And tell them what's going on and let them know that you're feeling controlled, you're feeling manipulated, and that you don't feel safe in your relationship anymore. And perhaps they can help you to navigate an exit strategy.
The thing is, sometimes it's not easy to tell someone what's going on. I was so embarrassed and ashamed of what I was going on in my life and my relationship. I didn't want to tell people what was going on, because they'd be like, really? You, Wendy, of all people? You're so confident. You're, you know, and it was like, I was ashamed. And I there are situations I wish I could go back and change, but they've made me who I am today, and now I can't. But I would say to anybody that's in a relationship, before I come to Val and she gives her advice, but to anyone who's in a relationship, that is, it has to start with you. You have to look at yourself and go, where's Wendy gone? What has happened to her? You used to be such this different person, and now this person has come along in your life. And for me, I'm still there. That woman is still in me. And I've been in relationships, sometimes just brief ones, or where something will happen and I'm right back in that moment. I'm right back in that relationship, and I'm like, oh my God. And I go back into that behavior. I go completely one way, or I go completely the other way, like I'm like pushing it away, or I'm like, oh my God, and I go freeze and I go quiet, and I don't know what to do. And my friends will say, this is not like you, Wendy. You're so sort of like, you'll just come out and say it. But I think trauma leaves its scars and its memories with you. So for me, it would be like trying to find yourself, listen to yourself, listen to that. Don't listen to your head and your heart, because they will argue, and your gut instinct is always the one that is right, and it's the one that tells you that, you know, no, this is right or wrong. So for me, it would be to like find the answers within yourself and try and find that confidence bit by bit if you can. For me, it was like packing my bags little by little by little by little by little to get out. And so my stuff was less there, and then when it finally came, I could just leave. But I was terrified to do that, terrified they would notice that I took my stuff. But where's that gone? What have you done with this? Oh, you know, pacifying. That's the other thing, pacifying them, being a people pleaser, going, oh no, it's okay, don't worry. It was awful. And I look back and I know that I still have that in me. I know she's still in there in me, and I just have to. It's a constant battle. And although I am this confident woman that you see today, there are episodes where she's still there. For you, Val, what would you say? What would be your on point?
I was like you. I was afraid to tell anyone, because I had that fear of, I had done something wrong, and I had failed during I had failed that marriage. Wasn't, even at that point, it wasn't his fault. I was still saying I failed. But I think actually talk to people. It's not going to be what you think. They're not going to, most people, if they are your friends, they're going to want to help you. They're not going to want to, poke fingers at, who's at fault. And listen to people who have outside eyes. It's hard to see what's going on when you're in that relationship. A lot of times people can see what you can't. And, you may not notice something that somebody else does. So actually listen to them, and hopefully, before you get too far into this relationship, you can kind of catch the red flags. But it's hard to do when you're already in it.
Yeah.
But you have to. It's a fine line between watching out for things and interpreting everything as a red flag.
Interesting
You need to understand that everybody's not the same.
Interesting point there from Carlene, Val, because she writes, some people that do reach out for help, they do get blamed. I do know of some people that have actually tried to leave that situation, and people have said, why are you doing that? What are you doing that for?
Well, I got blamed.
Yeah.
But now the people who know me and love me, know who I am, never judged me. They were, the only thing they did was try to help. It's the people that don't know me that pointed fingers.
When we're kids or youngsters, we're like a sponge. We absorb so much, and we learn a lot of our behaviors from our childhood. Like my parents divorced, there was a lot of stuff I wish I'd not heard and seen. Luckily my mum tried to cover up a lot, but you're aware of it. But I was bullied in school. I was bullied quite a lot in school, and it really affected me, my confidence. And I was very tall, and I would end up putting my head down and not looking at them and trying to hide. Can you think of other areas, Tracy, in your life where, without not being a romantic or relationship, where you have had that perhaps being dominated over and you felt like very vulnerable?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I was bullied at school too. I think that probably stuck with me for quite a while. When I was at school, my parents were very straight down the line. My dad was very powerful in what he did. And I think that had an effect on me not being able to speak up as a child. So when I went to school, I wasn't one of the outspoken ones. I was one of the ones that got on with work. My dad was a teacher. I had no choice. My dad, I would have been more scared of my dad than anything else if anything went wrong when I was a child. So when I left school, it actually helped me being bullied at school. And I know it doesn't with a lot of people, but it helped me because then every job I went into, I wanted to be the best I possibly could at each job I did. And I think I achieved it. In every job I went to, I got to the highest position because I didn't want to be in the position where someone could be overpowering me. I remember when I left school, I trained as a chef, and if anyone's worked as a chef, you'll know how bossy and bully like a lot of the head chefs are. And we had a very bad, very rude, very pompous, arrogant, dominant head chef. And I left college very quickly because I couldn't be in that situation. I'd gone through bullying at school. So why would I want it again in my workplace? So I actually changed careers because of someone who was rude, dominant, arrogant, however we want to describe it. So yeah, the fact that I actually took what I'd had thrown at me, turned it around and then made the best I possibly could out of myself. It's kind of ironic then that I ended up in a marriage that turned out to be back to being dominated again, which didn't work. I think there's other people now in the chat saying they were bullied too, I think many of us were. I think it is just a school thing. You're either with the dominant ones at school or you're with the passive ones at school.
What about you, Sabrina? Can you share something that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I worked in hospitality for a while, and I found myself in a couple of occasions where my superiors were not very good at their jobs in terms of being an effective manager. They wanted to, they were on an ego trip. They were on a power trip. They wanted to exert their power over those who reported up to them. And, you know, it was one of my first jobs. So I was trying to do my best to, you know, prove myself, prove them that I was worthy to be there. And I found through my progression in my career life that I didn't have to actually, that kind of management was a completely unhealthy form of management, and that there are situations out there, employment opportunities out there, where you get to be in a position to feel like you have control over what you're doing, what you're responsible for. It's very autonomous and not micromanaged. And now that I have that, it's like night and day. I can't be grateful enough for just having that now. So I would say for those who are in a work situation where you are really struggling to maintain a certain level of autonomy over your own work, maybe it's time to do a shift in your position in some way, or have a word with your boss's boss. I don't know.
I see what you mean, because for me, when I was bullied, it certainly did my self-esteem. But the one thing it made me want to do is be a champion for other people that are bullied. Like if I saw someone being picked on, or I saw kids or animals or anything like that, I would just rile up and go, don't do this. Who are you, you know, why are you doing this? So it actually put me on the road, I think, to go and work for places like victim support, bereavement service, to go into counselling. I think it taught me that, you know, to feel so helpless and have no power, and also with my illness, feeling like I didn't have any power. I wanted to go and help other people and make a difference. So for me, it was like, I don't want anyone else to go through what I've went through, but if they have, I want them to be able to talk to someone who knows what they've been through. So for me, it was kind of like to become more of a protector, you know, what was I trying to think the right words for it? You know, so that I could support other people. And I still do. You know, if I see animals picked on, if I see children picked on, if I see elderly or handicapped or anyone being picked on and berated by someone else. And you know what? I just want to say this because I'm sure Val's going to come up with her experience, bless her. But anyone who berates another person, it's really low. I'm sorry, but it's really low. It makes you a piece of shit, in my opinion, because you know what? Who makes you better than anyone to berate another one and to run you down and to call you names? And if we call someone names and if we berate someone down, we give away our power. We are becoming as, you know, as low as the people that we don't like who are doing it. So I think it's really important to remember that don't do to others as you wouldn't want done to yourself. What about you, Val? What do you feel that it was a positive reinforcement for you, going through what you went through? What did it change?
You know, the one thing that I always think about whenever I think, you know, about my past is it never diminished my ability to love other people. You know, I didn't get that jaded, you know, way of seeing things. Like, you know, I know you said in high school and everything, I was kind of a wallflower in high school. I kind of just got along with everybody. But even then, I really, if I saw somebody doing something to somebody else, I would say something. And I think I kind of lost that in the process of being married and being, you know, berated and belittled and talked down to so much, which my first marriage was, you know, physical, emotional, and mental abuse. Yeah. So, you know, I had all three for, you know, 14 years, mainly the last 12, to kind of beat me down and make me forget who I was.
Yeah.
So it took that long or longer to find who I was. And, you know, those years of finding myself again, I wouldn't speak up. You know, I would just take what people gave and just, you know, kind of, okay. You know, I didn't have a voice. So it took me a long time to find that voice again. And maybe I found too much of it. But, you know,
Yes, because it
I-
can go the other way, can't it? It can knock
it
one
can.
out and two in.
Yeah. But, you know, I think inside it takes me back to how I felt in the middle of it when I see somebody else doing that to someone. So yeah, I do try to, you know, be there for other people that I see or that need me.
Mm.
You know, even if they just need to talk, or whatever they need.
I think
I
we
try
also
to help.
in other ladies, don't we, or other people, we recognize traits of ourselves.
Yeah.
Tracy and Sabrina, perhaps you can let us know, like you I know Tracy and I, because obviously like we chat all the time, but she'll say to me, oh my God, I see this in you. I see this is what I know. And it was like, wow, you know, usually you're so confident, Wendy, you're like blah blah blah. So we have this sort of thing that she's recognized. And for you, Sabrina, do you see it, before I come back to Tracy, do you see it in other people as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think that in just talking to you, Wendy, I found, you know, instances where I could relate to you and your experience really resonated with me. But certainly with other friends I've had in the past, and I do try and be explicit about what I perceive, because I think it's actually a responsibility as a friend or even as a relative to call out when I see an unhealthy relationship or an unhealthy or toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Because otherwise I'm compliant and kind of not supporting it, but I'm letting it happen. Right.
Yes, and Tracy, I'm sure you've got something to say on this point.
I don't know if I dare. I definitely think that when you can see someone responding in the same way that they've previously told you off for responding, then it's quite beneficial to be able to say, this is exactly what you were saying to me last time. Or you know, when you're both going through quite a similar situation, as we have, to be able to say, you know, I know you and you would be saying this to me normally, but you're not. You know, what's changed with you? What's happening with you? So to be able to recognize in your friend that they're not the person that you know in their reaction to what's happening. You know, like for instance, I mean, obviously Wendy's one of my best friends. I know how she reacts to things. I know how strong a woman she is, and when I see that she's not reacting like that, I know that something's got under her skin or something's not right, or but then I can relate it to something that she would have told me off for. And I think that's the easiest way for it to sit in certainly your head, Wendy, is when I say, this is exactly what you said to me X amount of months ago, or you know, it's I think if a friend is going to point out to us that things are, or they can spot signs of things going wrong in maybe the relationship we're in, with the work we're in, then we need to start trusting our friends, because they're on the outside and us on the inside thinks, no, everything's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. But I think our friends know us best, and our friends know how normally we would be. And when they can see that we're reacting to something differently, I think it's really important that men and women listen to what their friends are saying. You know, it's up to you to believe what's being said, but at least trust that your friends can see there's a change happening there.
I think that's 100%. I mean, you know, I have been in the situation the last so many months of my life where situations have come into my life, and Tracy has said, this isn't you. This isn't how you respond, right? I know how you respond. You're normally very forthright, very to the point, and I'm very much an empowerer. That's something I want to do. This is why when I talked about Wicked Women, and Val and I, said we're going to do this, we wanted to empower women to actually realize that then, I know there's lots of different things. There's The Voice and Loose Women in the UK and all things like that. But it's like we wanted to be a space where people could come on and hear our situation and know that we're there for them. We're not here to judge, we're here to listen. And we invite the guys who are waiting backstage to come on and give their opinion as well, because it's happened to them as well. And we very much wanted it to be an equal thing. It's just we're supporting the women, but we also want them to hear that, what the guys go through as well. So I know that I have found myself back in that behavior, stuck in a pattern, going, oh my God, I didn't know. And it just took that slightest thing to come in that mentally set that pattern off in me again. And Tracy be like, this isn't you, and you start thinking, oh my God. So Val, you know exactly where I'm coming from in this.
Absolutely. That's why one thing I always, if any of my friends have problems or anything like that, I always tell them, well, what would you tell me if I came to you with that same question?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell me to do? Yep. And they're like, well, I'd tell you, well, that's what you need to do. It's almost like you're blind to what's happening to you, but you can see it happen to somebody else. So if you get in the mindset of, well, what would I tell somebody else to do in the same situation? That's pretty much what you need to do.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get in that mindset. It's easier for somebody else.
100%. It's so hard, isn't it? And you don't know you've gone back into that mindset. I'm doing behavior that I haven't done in a long time. And it's like, people point it out to me and you go, oh, and it's because you're in an emotional state, or maybe a pattern of behavior is playing again. Now, normally we chat away, but we used to go to the afterglow, and we are trying to get back into that where we bring the others on, because Wicked Women has been offered the chance to go on onto a radio, which by now we'd have to go, okay, we say goodbye to the radio audience and carry on with YouTube with this. So we're going to try and get back into that. So I'm going to take us into the afterglow. Please stay with us. We're not going anywhere. We're just literally having like half a minute break. And then when we do, we're going to come back with the guys as well. But ladies, I know from Val and myself, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Thank
you.
We're back. It's that quick. How was your first time, guys? How are you feeling? Okay?
Good.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's kind of exciting. I'm going to bring in, we like to be fair on Wicked Women, and we're going to carry on with this topic of dominance, and ask some of the guys' point of view as well. And we have two guys that are quite vocal, and they come in and chat away. One is a massive supporter and promoter of Wicked Women, and we always call him Mr. Wicked because he promotes this show for Val and I, and we do. We're very, very grateful. So let's bring in Michael first of all. Hello, Michael.
Good evening, ladies. How are y'all?
How you doing?
Hanging in there. Finally got the internet straightened out. I hope I'm not too choppy right now. But no, I see four very dominant women sitting here in front of me. Great show.
Thank you.
But like I said, men get that too. I remember, Val brought up, listen to your friends. I had a friend tell me, hey, Michael, this is not no good for you. And I had come from a background where I was used to running on adrenaline and being keyed up all the time. And I thought that was normal. And it was not normal. And, when you're so close, you can't see, the trees. We're looking at the whole forest. And it's like, and now that I'm away from that, I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm surprised I didn't have a heart attack. I was hypertensive.
Can
And
you
it was just like that.
explain
And,
what sort of situation that was, Michael?
oh, she was an alcoholic. Drugs and alcohol brings out the worst of people. And males can deal with that too. You walk in here thinking, damn, I hope she's passed out. I don't want to deal with that shit. And so you just try to avoid it at all costs. It's like, I don't want to fight tonight. And, and people like that who say they're dominant, they're narcissists, they have their own agenda. And it's not being dominant. It's being an asshole, which is gender neutral. And like I said, I lived with that for 8 years. I'm like, I didn't know. I actually told somebody one time, I would rather have another compliment. Let's go home to her. Because at least you could have a way out there. And like I said, walking on the eggshells, men get it too. Abandonment issues. And I look back at it now that where I'm in school for abnormal psychology, and I think she has a lot of daddy issues that she tried to project on all men. All men are this. And when you drink, that amplifies your personality, good or bad. And it just brought the worst out in her.
Did you feel
And I
like
dealt with that
as
for a long time.
do you feel like as a man you lost your power and it made you feel that you should have it? How did it make you feel?
No, he killed the relationship. I just went and got a girlfriend.
Can you hear me with that?
It
Did you
didn't
hear
kill
that?
my power. I've always been very powerful now. Yeah. Like I said, it just killed the relationship. Finally, you have enough and you just find other means that you don't have to walk on eggshells and you don't always have to be so pinned up all the time. And that's what I did, which I've told that story before. She was a certain way, so I went looking for her all the time.
Val, it's
That's
good
what
to
I
see
did,
that.
which I told that story before. She was a certain way, so I went looking for her all the time.
It's Val, it's good
That's
to
what I
see
did, which
that.
I told that story before.
I'm just gonna take Michael out of there because literally, that Virginia has a really bad weather right now, and so that it's affecting their internet. I'm going to bring the lovely Jason on. Hello. Let me see. I can't hear you either. You need to unmute your mic.
There we go. Yeah.
Right.
If I hit the mute button.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just got in from outside where it was, negative. Let's not talk about it. So, but
Have you been you've been watching the show, obviously, and listening? Is there anything you can relate to Jason in this?
there's plenty of things I can probably relate to. I do have to, before I go into any of that, scratch my ADHD hyper focus on something itch. And I believe it was Sabrina who mentioned it earlier. And so I have to ask her a question.
Sure.
You said ballroom dancing.
Mhm.
So are we talking ballroom dancing, or are we talking Lindy Bop, West Coast swing, East Coast swing, Western swing? Like, what are we talking about here?
Everything, all of it. Mostly, I competed in smooth, so I did waltz, foxtrot, tango.
All right, well, I got to leave the conversation. Thanks. I'm out. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
No, I got curious about that. I love swing, Western swing, all of that. So it's like,
Yeah. Those are the great social dances to do, right? And especially to meet new people. I think it's a perfect way to do
And
something that doesn't require
jive is great
training.
too. I love jive. Not any good at it, but jive dancing and stuff with the rockabilly, that's all
Yeah.
my wheelhouse kind of thing stylistically. So yep, I was curious about that. Thanks. Um, well, no, I think there's a lot of things that I can identify with in terms of the conversation and where it went. I myself have been in, my fair share of emotionally and at times physically abusive relationships. It's very interesting when you're a 6 foot tall guy in the army who comes in weighing 180 plus pounds or whatever, depending on how much working out I was doing outside of regular PT. And you have like a 5'4", weighs maybe $110, when they're wet, just start wailing on you, and things like that. You want to talk about a paradigm shift in mental state. So I've been down those paths before. One of the things that I kind of keyed in on mentally, and those of y'all have been in here when I am in here, you guys know I tend to go against the grain. And I also tend to...
Wait, Jason, just a tad notice. Just a tad.
And I also tend to try to encourage people to stop looking at things of men versus women and people versus people, because at the end of the day, we're all people, and we're all this animal human being with the same kinds of flaws. We just maybe express them more powerfully or less powerfully. But when we turn to friends, I think we have to be very careful when we turn to friends to get that outside view. And it is key to get an outside opinion, because when you are in the middle of it, you are in too deep, and the view from your foxhole is very narrow. You don't have the 20,000 foot view that somebody else may have. But we also have to be very, very careful and selective, because I have watched, and I have been on the, I hate to say receiving end, because I know it's like they just mean well, but people who have been in a history of toxic relationships, or they have gotten out of relationships and are very, very bitter, will also see things very, very differently and interpret things very, very differently. And so what they may be telling you, they may be hyper cute on things and blowing things out of proportion because of the filter with which they view the world. So if you're going to go talk to that friend who's that close confidant, make sure they are not in a damaged state either, because then it turns into the blind leading the blind. But it's definitely been on the end of emotional abuse, and I think in my latest one, relationship, I don't think they even realized they were doing it, because they had been through a bunch of toxic relationships. They had a positive one before me, and it's one of those things where, like like folks were saying earlier, you get into something that becomes your new normal. You don't recognize it, and it takes a couple of times before you do start recognizing that, like, hey, everything that I viewed about stuff isn't normal. And there's a lot of things that I put up with. I tend to be a bit more on the submissive side going into a relationship, and I think that harkens back to my time in the military. Running a section in the motor pool, dealing with soldiers and dealing with NCOs, having to butt heads against majors who didn't want to follow the regs, or who wanted to try to skirt around something, and having to go toe to toe with them, stuff like that. By the time I got home, I wanted peace. That's all I wanted. And so to have somebody,
it was for an easy life. It was like for an easy life. Then is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and maybe not so much an easy life. I mean, sure, there's the whole thing with happy wife, happy life thing, but more of, I've been making decisions and I've been in command mode all day. Can someone else please just tell me what to do so I don't have to think about it? And I can just work on serving the relationship, and I can work on feeling close and loved and protected emotionally, and connect with someone emotionally and physically and things like that. That, you want to switch it off because you've been carrying the burden of command, so to speak, all day, all week, all month, all year. And it's just nice to be able to have that thing where you can kind of melt into that other person and let them, hey, here's what we're going to do. Sounds good. If there's something that would pop up that was really off the wall, hold on, let's functions check that real quick. Cool idea, bud.
I think most people that if they follow Scotty's radio, Intrepid Radio, and also earlier episodes of Robertson and Wicked Women, will know that Michael and JP both have military backgrounds, so it's quite interesting to hear. So if Michael coming to you, listening to what Jason's saying, can you, as a guy, and also with that sort of high power job, would you agree?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. Women would take advantage of the guy in the Army, because the only thing it would take is an act. Is somebody saying, he hit me, career done. I have been on the many, involved with many investigations, not involved, what I'm saying, not me being investigated, but being there as an NCO, you get a call,
15-6
then
something,
he's called up and say, hey, and they call you and say, hey, is this your boy? Yeah. And, they look you straight in the face and say, hey, Sergeant, I never laid a hand on her. And, they be all clawed up and stuff like that. The woman not have a mark, but, it starts an avalanche of paperwork. And like I said, it don't go back to being dominant or whatever. It goes back to being a heartless, whatever, asshole, murder, Had a few other words for him back in the day, but I have mellowed out some of my old age. But I get it. After you have commanded troops all day, you're mentally and physically exhausted. And when you come home, you want to leave that at the door. And after I found out that I could leave work at work and have home at home, my life got a whole lot much better. But like I said, but a lot of women and some men will take advantage of, if they can put your career in danger, which they don't understand. That is also taking their means of earning also. But some people are just so screwed up they can't see it.
Ladies,
but like I said, and people look at JP, like you said, over 6 foot tall.
Yeah. Ladies, what do we feel listening to these guys talking about that they had these great, careers, Val, and and they've now, they want to give their power because they're so used to being told what to do, being having to make decisions, take care of other people. How do it's kind of, do we as women, like in our lives as mums and wives and everything, are we similar to that?
I think so, to a certain degree. I know when my kids were, in diapers, babies and on up, when you do that all day long, you kind of want to, sit back and not have to do that for even an hour, just to chill. So it's kind of along the same lines. When you have, I think you kind of have to take up slack on both sides. You kind of have to let them decompress, but I think they need to realize that a woman that is staying home with kids all day, that's it. You need a little break from that also. So
listening to Val, what she's saying, and listening to the boys and Sabrina, I'll come to both of you while I welcome Scotty to the show because I'm bringing him in, he's waiting. Tracy, what do you feel like listening to the guys? How does that make you feel? And also Jason's comment about listening, which is a very good point, listening to someone else who perhaps is angry or damaged or jaded or whatever. How does that, what's your take? I'm dying to know.
Here's trouble.
Who said
Yeah,
that?
I do think
Jason?
Go
I do-
JC, sorry, carry on.
that dominant. Sorry.
Hang on.
Hi,
Hang on a
Scotty.
second.
I do think that if you're in a very dominant job, sorry,
No, carry on. There's a
was that Wendy
feed
you
that's
froze for me.
it's so I'll start again. You know, when Jason came up with a comment about, you know, if someone's in that sort of you go to someone for advice and yet they've already got maybe a bad mood or they've had hurt experience or they're jaded. What does that sort of, how does that feel? That point?
I think it depends entirely on the person you're going to, how much you trust their opinion, how well they know you. If you're going to who knows you super well, you know their life and their experiences. For instance, when we're talking, I think you know whether you're getting a biased opinion or not. Put it that way. I do agree that times you can go to somebody for help, and the opinion can be dependent on what their mood is at the time. But if they're a good friend of yours, you would probably know if they're not in their normal. I don't know who Jason's referring to that you would go to where you wouldn't notice that their opinion would be different than it normally would be, if that makes sense. So, you know, for instance, as someone who is meant to be a best friend, you would know if their attitude was off or if they were having a bad time, in which case they're probably not the best person to ask or seek help from. I definitely think you need an outside opinion on something. If you're starting to think, can I see red flags? Can't I? I think outside opinion's always good, but you do have to trust the person you're asking. Definitely.
To speak to your not being sure who I'm talking about, you know. So here's one of the things that we can probably, if we stop and we take kind of a hard look at ourselves, we do it as well in a way, but everyone does it to an extent of where we mask. You can have someone that you are incredibly close with, but for whatever reason, they mask. You know, and you'll see it. You know, perfect examples for me. I would use one of my best friends out there, a guy named Carl back in Missouri. He's a fellow OEF vet. You know, he was an engineer. He did a lot of convoy ops and things like that, and saw a lot of stuff. And you know, I knew those things, and it wasn't something we always talked about, and it wasn't something that he always allowed even the people closest to him to see that it impacted him. And it actually, you know, it wasn't until we were coming back from a gun show where we're driving along and something allowed things to kind of come out. When you're used to, you know, wearing a mask, you don't allow your troops to see that. Because if they do see that, I mean, on one hand, there's a school of thought that's, you know, they see that you're human just like they are, which in the right circumstances can lead someone to bonding and to developing a deeper appreciation because you have something to relate over. But at the same time, it's kind of you don't want to look weak for your men or ladies. You know, and so you put up a wall, you put up a mask. It's not something that you regularly talk about or display because you want to be strong for those people in your life that you care about and that you're close with. And maybe that's more of a masculine trait in terms of trying to appear strong. But in instances like that, you can very much have somebody who you don't know the depth of something going on, even if you are incredibly close, just because people try to put on a tough face for the people around them, so the other people don't lose heart. And that's just kind of what I'm getting at with things like that.
Did you kind of mean, Jason, that you might have an issue or problem, and you go to someone else and you talk to them, and they might give you an opinion, obviously based on how they're feeling or what they've been through, or a jaded kind of oh, that happened to me. You want to be doing this, because what we're talking about is a dominant character. We're talking about dominance and in character. And obviously in your jobs that you guys had to do, you had to be strong. When you come home, you kind of left, as you said, you wanted to just give that. What I'm trying to say is, and I'm looking at, and I'm going to bring Scotty in and ask Sabrina, obviously her, Scotty, welcome to the show. It's lovely to see her. To bring Sabrina in here, because Sabrina's writing down some bits and pieces down here. And I think self-help books can be helpful to people. Any kind of book can be helpful to someone if you get something from it. If it touches you, if it reaches you at a deeper level, you can learn something from it. And I would say as well, Phil Guy, I've got to pick you up on this. When he says, let me just see, it's back here somewhere, Scotty's in the show, let's help see if he can make sense of it. And I'm like, I think you can find that us ladies are doing pretty well here. We know what we're doing. But Sabrina, you made up some really good points here. And listening to Jason and Michael, what's your sort of take?
So to respond to Jason's perspective, I agree that there are going to be people in your life that have an agenda for how they see your life turning out, and they will try to influence things to turn in a certain way that is in the favor of what they want to see happen to your life. So you have to be very selective and be aware of what their agendas are. For instance, I think that typically our parents are very inclined to live vicariously through us, and they want to see us wind up with a certain partner, or they want to see us in a certain career. And so I typically don't go immediately to my parents for advice. I go to somebody who I feel like is a strong character that has proven time and time again to be loyal to me, and to never judge my choices as an individual, and to never judge me. That's the ultimate thing, is to judge me or try to control me and give me the freedom and the autonomy to decide something for myself, whether it's a mistake in their eye or not. I have to learn that for myself. So if I don't have a personal relationship with somebody that I can trust to do that with, I go to a counselor. A counselor is a secondary, I think, a professional opinion who has zero agenda except for helping to guide you towards a path of.
And also they're non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And, absolutely. So has anyone got their TV on or music, because it's coming through into the podcast? I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, if they could just turn down.
There's a TV on in the other room. If I mute myself, does it go away? Let's see.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Stand by. Shut up, Jason. Stand by. I'll be right back.
I'm like, somebody's got a TV on here and it's got to be turned off. And we everyone's opinion is very, very different. But Sarah writes, self-help books are a double-edged sword. They may contain knowledge that could be helpful or damaging, depending on the ability of the reader to discern from it. True point. I mean, everyone's read self-help books. We've all bought them. We've all listened to the podcast, or we've done what we can to help us. And Scotty, I'm bringing you back into the show, and once again, welcome. But we've been talking about dominance tonight. Dominance in relationships, dominance in in work, but also dominance in friendships, where you can feel that someone talks over you, belittles you, puts you down, makes you feel small. You feel like your self-worth is being taken away from you. You feel powerless. And so it's not just one set area. And it's like, can you give us an example of also when that has happened to you and you felt like your power was gone and that wasn't who you were?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Sorry, my TV was too loud. I couldn't hear
Okay.
you. No. And I apologize for that. This is a
Cheeky.
directional mic. It usually doesn't pick that stuff up.
Mm.
It seems. I certainly have thought about this a lot. And lately I had, if I could say it this way, when I was younger, a younger man, I allowed myself to get walked on quite a bit. I didn't assert myself very much. Those of you who know me might think that seems out of character for me because I think I've developed a pretty strong opinion about the world and life and everything over the years. And I don't say that in any way other than a descriptor. And I think I overcompensated in that area quite a bit because I was tired of being walked over. Even though, I was one of those guys that had a great job. I had worked on my master's degree. I had done all these different things in life. And still, it seemed I lacked the confidence to stand up to people, to stand up for what I believe. And in a sense, that turned into being a little more aggressive about it sometimes. Not, Wendy, you know me pretty well. I don't know if you would describe me as an aggressive person, but I would get to the point where I said, I need to be diplomatic. I need to be smart about the things I say. I need all these things, but at the same time, I need to put forward my point and the thing that I believe in. I got somebody, and the reason this came to surface for me, I had somebody just the other day who is an old friend who said they didn't want to be my friend anymore because they the things that I stand for, politically, my political ideologies, and she listed this whole list of things that were because you do this, because you've done that, and because you're this. And she said, you're an as seen on TV type of person. I said, well, really? You're a this, you're a that. And now I will say the upside, I'll give the end of that story. We did talk last night and it's all sorted out. So she said they were superficial perceptions. But I think sometimes, and on my own show, I've got this little box of matchsticks, faux matchsticks. And you open it up and it's got these faux matchsticks and printed on them, as it says on the bottom here, 50 ways to be bold. And I said, and I teach my own kids. I've got 6 of them, 2 sons, and I teach all of them. You have to put yourself forward. You have to be strong about what you believe. Don't let anybody tell you not to believe what you believe. And don't let anybody put you down for what you believe. I used to be, when I was in school, we're talking when I was a kid, but I remember having a teacher chewing me out for something in the front of the class. And it wasn't the regular teacher. It was a regular substitute that we all knew. He was chewing me out for something. And he said, you just did that because you're this, right? And I disagreed with him, but I wasn't confident enough to say anything back to him. I agreed. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to be stood up in front of the class and lectured like that. And so I kept my mouth shut. Now, people say, oh, that's such a silly little incident. But I think back to that. That's over 50 years ago. But I think back to that and I say, why is that still in my memory when I want to come up with something where I felt that I could not be assertive, that I was being bullied or something like that, because it's still there. And I don't want to take up too much more time, but I was also, as you know so well, and my listeners know this, I've talked about it, I was sexually abused when I was a little kid. I mean, we're talking 5 years old. I always grew up with the memory of that thing and never was like, I never felt I was like, oh, I was abused. And, I never was that way about it. It was always just another memory. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I started to understand how that had affected my modes of operation, the way I do things, the way I treat other people, the way I didn't like being subdued, didn't like being controlled. Not didn't like is a trite way to put it, but there was a point where I said, I will not be controlled by anybody. And that is the way I developed from that point in my 30s. I worked very hard at saying, you know what? I am who I am, and I don't care. Everybody says, think of when you're public speaking, think of the people all wearing their underwear out there. Well, that's kind of a dangerous thing to do sometimes, because you're like, hey, I kind of like that. That's kind of cool. No, but you think of them that way so you can get, and I say, why do I need to do that? Why don't I just think of everybody else as just as tainted as me, has just as many problems and foibles and idiosyncrasies and all of that as me, and there's not a single damn one of those people that has the ability or the right to tell me to do something better or different. Now, I can have advisors and mentors and people that I can go to voluntarily, but when somebody starts trying to preach me up personally and tell me, well, I've looked at you and here's where you need to change your ways. And I'm like, fuck off. I got this handled. And sometimes having confidence in where you are in life and being assertive about what you know and you believe can be superficially perceived by others as being, oh, you're arrogant. This friend who called me the other day and said, you're full of pomposity and arrogance. I said, no, I'm not. And what's your argument for that when that comes? And I think I learned a long time ago, I don't want somebody else dominating me. And it's not like let's keep this in balance here. I'm not like saying I'm afraid of being dominated. So I have to overcompensate. Maybe at the beginning I did. When I started realizing it, I think it's a thing of I just don't let it happen. And I walk into a room where I might not have ever been there before or met any of those people, and I'll come out and I'll say, maybe some of it is affectatious, but I'll say, hey, everyone, and you go in there and you kind of take control of who you are. So nobody else thinks that they can. And now,
Yes.
be that for good or ill, that's what I have done. And that's how I have learned to compensate for that. I don't know if you're talking specifically in relationships, but
It's interesting you share that, and thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Because very interesting to listen to. And I was going to say, Val, that there comes a time where we do meet a lot of confident people who can come across quite aggressive, as Scotty's talking about, or
Yeah.
full of themselves, and Val, you and I have had long chats about this as well. But how do we feel? Like, I know there's a few people in my life, and sometimes they'll come out and say something and do something, and I'll be like, that's a bit cocky, or that's a bit aggressive, or or that's and they're just being themselves. They're just being absolutely themselves and being really, really just confident. Now, myself, when Scotty brings up a point, when I walk in a room, I have that kind of mask on where I'm strong and I'm confident and I can do this, and no one can see that vulnerable side of me whatsoever. And I walk in a room and everyone sees that image. But inside, I'm like the swan sometimes, this swan that's gliding across the pond with its legs like that. Do you feel like you've got that as well, Val? Do you think you portray that as well?
I know for a fact I used to. I try to be the same always now, but I imagine that I do kind of revert back to that sometimes, depending on the situation. Um, but for the most part, I'm the same always. You know, I try to be anyway. But yeah, in my past, I have done that quite often.
You put the mask on, like Scotty was saying, like, you know, you
Yeah.
walk in a room and it's like, because part of you is confident and part of
Yeah.
you is, but the other half of you is like, there is that, you know, because he brings up a very good point about when you have been abused, and Sabrina and Tracy, that's bringing you in as well, like listening to Scotty talking about, you know, the fact that, you know, being such an innocent child and having that happen to him, having his power taken from him as a kid. Incredibly scary. There's a lot of us that have had sexual abuse, physical abuse in our past. We've all had, you know, sadly, these terrible things happen to us. And it changes us, and he puts on it. You wouldn't think listening to him that there's still that young boy in him because he is in us. Obviously, he's still in Scotty.
I sometimes, Wendy, I wonder if that hadn't happened, what kind of person would I be?
Yeah.
How would I have turned out? How would my ways of doing things been any different? I don't know. Maybe this is my personality anyway, and that was just a catalyst to make it go. I don't know. But
Sabrina,
because we've all got stuff.
What's your thoughts?
I think that's a very powerful question, Scotty. That idea of who would I be today if I didn't experience that trauma? And
Right.
I think that there's a very good chance I would have probably found a partner that's, you know, a good partner for me. I would have been in a more functioning, secure relationship by now.
Hi, let me mute. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. So honestly, I too was abused as a child by someone in our social circle, and I was aware of it. I was old enough to understand really that this was not the norm, because I didn't tell anybody about it, right? I felt like somehow I was maybe responsible for it. And that really played a role in how I perceived my value and how I perceived myself as what I could bring to the table and what my worth was. And so I ended up using my body as a way of getting to be close to people, especially men, especially bosses of mine. And so I look back now and I'm terrified of the fact, and I'm sad that I went through that experience, and I'm sad that there are other people that have gone through that and are going through that. So yeah, does that kind of answer your question, Wendy?
I mean, because it's powerless, isn't it? As a child, as an innocent child, to have both of you have had this experience, and you lose it's in my family. You know, it's happened in my family too, and there are certain members of my family that could probably sit here and say it was like losing your power, your innocence, your control. Tracy, if you coming to you, what's your sort of view and take on what Scotty was talking about, how he walks in a room with that confident mask, you know, that I'm fine, it's all good, I've got this, which he probably has, but also inside because of what he went through. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I tend to be the opposite. So if I walk in a room, I tend to hide. I'm not confident in crowds. I wasn't abused, thankfully, as a child. But I definitely went through some experiences that where I had an extremely strong and quite forcefully opinionated father. He used to, when we were children, hold really big parties at the house for very well-to-do people in the local area. And we all had to be paraded in and say hello to everybody, introduced as their children. I used to dread it, absolutely dread it. And I think as I grew up, I hated going in crowds and and having people speak to me. I hated it, and I believe it stemmed from that. So I was very submissive then. Then when I became successful in my job, I used to go to a big I'm a photographer, a fairly successful one. And I used to go to big photography shows, and I would have people come up to me and say hi. Didn't have a clue who they were, but people recognized me. I used to hate it. I would hide. Others on the same sort of level as me used to revel in it. They loved it. But I was a very passive and kind of shy person. I am able to be dominant at times, but it definitely didn't have the effect on me where I want to walk in a room and just say hi to everybody. I'm the person that walks into a room, finds a seat at the back and sits down quietly. So yeah, definitely didn't have the same effect on me, although obviously it was different with, I don't know whether sexual abuse would have any difference in how it leads us to be as an adult. I don't know, because obviously it's not something I've experienced.
It took you a lot to come on here tonight. I know that you're not one. You found it very difficult to be out here tonight as well. Like you were like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. And I said, I think it'll be really good for you. I thought, yeah. I think you'd be like, it'd be really good for you because you chat to other people and it, but you're doing really well. And do you find that you want to change, you want to be more confident, you want to be more out there, or are you still wanting to like recluse?
No, I'm okay. I'm fine as I am, because as you know, I can be super confident in certain situations where I'm comfortable. It's not that I'm a really shy person, because I can be very strong and powerful when I want to be. I just choose to be sort of not in people's faces.
Yeah.
I am shy naturally, definitely, especially when meeting someone new. If I know someone, then yeah, there's no stopping me, as you know. But I think in both my dominant situations, my dominant relationships, for me, it was just easy to sit and not say anything and not tell anybody I was in that situation. I didn't really have a very close friend that I could share it with. So I didn't have anyone to point out to me that things were wrong. So yeah, I'm a bit of a different one in that it hasn't turned me into someone that's very powerful and dominant and wanting to be there. I'm still the kind of passive person I was at school that just took it and didn't really make a fuss. So yeah, but I do have it in me to be strong, and I'm just not when I'm with people I don't know.
That's a really interesting point. The fact that most of us are quite confident in our way, but you're saying actually I'm not, and some of me's okay with that. Michael and Jason, you've been sitting here really quietly listening to this, listening to Scotty, listening to us pass everything, and thank you for that, because what Scotty was saying had a lot of meaning and point to it, and I wanted us all to have a feedback on it. Coming to you, Michael, what do you feel about what you've been hearing with the fact that being young and having that having dominant? I mean, I'm aware that you had very dominant parent. So and you, growing up, it must have been, perhaps you'd like to give an experience. Your power was taken from you. Like
I always grew up, and I said the experience. Yeah. And either you become in a shell or you become very outgoing. And I've always been very outgoing. I was told one time that I walked into a room like I owned it or didn't give a fuck who did. And that's the way it is. It's cause and effect. You get battle hardened. You can only be beat on so much before it gets you really, really tempered. Basically, it's like quenching a sword. If you beat on it long enough and you quench it, it comes out the other side being a whole lot sharper and a whole lot meaner. And it took me a long time to calm down, older in life, because I had come from that background of, it went from my mom being beat on to her taking her power back with a big cast iron skillet. And I always tell people that's the day the power shifted in the home I grew up in, because she intended to either take her power back or kill him. And and I applaud her. She's been gone since 2015, and I still applaud her to this day for being able to stand up and say enough is enough. And because she had no friends to turn to, and she's kind of on her own. And like I said, his do or die time. So like I said, it's the butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings over here, and the tsunami happens over there. So it's cause and effect, nature, nurture. What you choose to do with it on the other side says a lot about you internally as a person. Me,
Did you think that did you
I
watch
got
your
away
mum?
from it as far as I could. Went to join the army.
Did you watch your mum wanting to take back power, but actually didn't have the confidence to do it? Did you actually see your mum trying to do that before she actually did?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said, it was it was a struggle for her just to be herself, and I seen her beat down, mentally and physically, because he was a narcissistic asshole. He got off on it, having power over somebody else, and he told me one day, either I want to be free or I want to kill him. And I think she intended to do it. They're both passed away now, so I can tell that story. And if anybody hears it, I don't care. What are they going to do? Spank me, take my birthday? I'm not worried about it. I'm not giving it up to nobody, But no, like I said, I seen her struggle day in and day out, and it was really, really sad. And it got to the point where it broke her. It really, really did. So, like I said, it's either you got to move out the other side stronger and a better version of yourself, or you don't. You collapse and the world
When your
crumbles
mum,
around you.
sorry, because there's a time lag here, that when your mum took back her power, did you notice a change in her? Like what did she become?
Oh, she became the best version of herself that she could be. She was happier. She was more outgoing, and it was like it's like Jekyll and Hyde. It's like two totally split personalities, and sometimes I think people can beat you down so much that it ends up fracturing your personality, and I think that's where a lot of your stuff comes into, and people adopt an alter ego. And they say, "Oh, this will never happen to me again because now I am this person," and and they identify as the person on the backside, other than a person that they was that took the abuse and had their power taken away from them.
That's a really, thank you for sharing that. That's a really, I know it's very personal, very powerful story, especially when you see your mum. And I know you've recently lost your dad as well.
Yeah.
So it brings back all kind of stuff. Jason, coming to you, you've been sitting there very quietly as well. Thank you for that. Listening to Scotty, listening to Michael and everyone, is there anything that you can relate to that you could tell us about?
Oh, geez. I think a lot of my stuff, in certain ways, I've been fortunate that I've been able to learn observationally rather than experientially. But you talk about someone having their power taken. How do I want to put this? So, observing something like that, and I think in certain ways, I mean, I've had my power, if you will, taken, and some of those abusive relationships. Somewhere I found the ability to step up and walk away and say, yeah, no. But watching it happen to someone, my ex's father, a man who worked himself constantly, even still into retirement age. He's a farmer, with working constantly, and watching him listening to my ex's, telling of various stories and watching, her mother, and then kind of seeing the interaction with things. One of those things where I've seen a guy who's a wonderful man. I mean, but he's literally just beat down. There isn't any power there. And how having someone who is overbearing and hypercritical all the time can actually completely wear a person down. It got to the point where I would be on the receiving end of hearing dad's just being lazy and this, that, and the other thing. And it's one of the things where it's like, everything you've ever told me about your mother, how she treats him, how she treats you, how she treats your brothers, and things like that. And you sit here and you wonder why your father is like this at the end of the day, after being in the field all day, trying to plant crops, trying to pull in crops, helping other farmers locally, because that's what they do out here. If there's an emergency, and working well into late into the evening, and just being exhausted, and then coming back and dealing with this kind of overbearing sort of barrage. Why do you think he just wants to sit there and relax? Why do you think it takes him a while to get to things? Man's exhausted physically, but also emotionally from his own partner. Now there's some trauma issues there that made a big shift with her mom. She was a court reporter and watched the judge get shot right there in the middle of the courtroom during a hearing over child support. And that's a traumatic experience, but she never dealt with it. And won't admit that she never dealt with it. Right? And you're not conditioned to seeing those kinds of things or understanding that you're going to potentially walk into a situation where you're going to be exposed to that kind of stuff. That takes a toll on someone who is not conditioned, right? And it was very much I'm not going to deal with this. No, I'm only going to go to counseling because it's required for me to do that to keep my job. But once I've hit my 12 sessions, whatever it was, I'm done with this because I don't need it. And there was a shift that took place there in her, the dynamics of the relationship, how she looked at things, and how that impacted stuff. So I got to watch Eddie kind of suffer silently. And that's a really sad thing to watch. But after 40 years of marriage, you start looking at things like taking your power back. It kind of turns into a question of, well, how do you even do that? You've been in something for so long. If you try to take your power back, what do you risk losing at that point? And does it become easier to just, all right, whatever. And yeah, so in terms of power and having your power taken away from you, that's probably one of the most recent relevant examples that I can give.
I wanted to ask the ladies, because I remember as Jason was speaking, a memory that came to mind. My parents were married for 19 years. My dad had 9 affairs in 19 years of their marriage, and it was a very, very difficult marriage. My dad wasn't the easiest of people to live with, and he would berate my mum quite a lot, and he would bring her down in confidence. If money was tight, they didn't have a lot of money, and if she had a coat and there was a function, you're not wearing that, I'm not going out with you, I don't even want to be seen with you wearing that, you can stay at home, I don't want to be out with you. That took its toll on her as a person. And listening to Jason, listening to Michael, with their experiences of what they've seen and watched, it seems that as human beings, we have the ability to empower and destroy one another so very, very easily with words as well as actions. It's very important that we leave the show with something that actually makes us feel we have become a more powerful version of herself in a positive way. Val, obviously bringing up that what I was saying about my mum. My mum is 86 now, and when she tells me that story, it's still as an emotional and painful for her to talk about now as it was back then. I can see the pain in her eye and how my dad would berate her and put her down. And she didn't, back in the 70s, there wasn't that money to leave the home. There wasn't that money to just leave the children. She couldn't just go and do that. There wasn't support, there wasn't benefit or anything like that. She was trapped in that situation for as long as she could. And I remember her trying to make food, and it was like it was never good enough. And he would have, and this happens with men and women, if they're seeing someone else or they're having an affair with someone, the other partner can be berated. You're not like her, or and there's someone else on the scene because they always tend to act a certain way. What I'm trying to say is, going through this as human beings, and we're destroying each other in how we act and what we do. What can we do? What have we learned from listening to these stories tonight, Val, that we can do to make something different?
Well, I mean, I think you have to remember that everybody's been through their own trauma.
Yeah.
It may not have been exactly like yours or even close to the same, but it still affects people, different ways. So whether it's the same kind of trauma or different, you still have to know, that they may be going through something that you don't know about. So, be a little nicer to people. You know what I mean? Because you don't know what somebody's past is. You don't know what people have been through. So, if your opinions or the way you see things are different, that's difference is fine. One person may see things different, may have came through something different than somebody else has.
And I think you're right, because it's how you listen. Sometimes we listen and we don't hear. We hear our own version or our own emotions, like Jason was saying earlier on. We hear our own stuff. Like you could tell me about something and it will bring up something in me that happened to someone else or happened to me.
Yeah.
And it will make me act and react in a certain way, which could not be the best positive way for someone else. And I think that I remember Tracy said to me in a situation, this is what I would do because this is how it makes me feel. But I realize it's you, and this is how, I'm here to support you. Tracy, listen to Michael and Jason and everything else, and Sabrina, we're going to bring you guys in. And thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. I know this is incredibly personal experience with everybody.
Yeah.
Tracy, how do you feel being part of this show tonight? And also, it was a subject I know was close to your heart. Is anything that's come out of this show that sort of helped in any way?
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to hear everyone's experiences. It's interesting the way our upbringings affect us as an adult. We could have two of us with exactly the same upbringing. One could go one way, one could go the other. I think the one thing to take away from this is that we all have our own way of reacting to things. And as I've said to you several times, I can only tell you what I would do in that situation. It's entirely up to you how you handle it. And I think, that's how we should be in life. We shouldn't be forcing our opinion on somebody else. Our opinion is our opinion because it's what we would do as ourselves. But it's not necessarily what someone else can do. And all we can do is support someone that's going through something like that, tell them how we might react to it, not be judgmental, and just understand that, we all have our own lives to lead. We all have our own decisions to make. I could have a best friend that's in what I see as a drastically dominant relationship that is killing their personality. And all I can do is say, if this was me in this situation, I'd be recognizing it because, but all I can do is be there to support. So yeah, I think, you know, I think we do, just the most important thing to do is recognize that we are all individual and we all handle things differently.
And have our buttons pressed as well, because something might remind us of something we went through. Sabrina, what about yourself? Because you talked about your marriage, and you know, listening to Michael's experience with his mum and dad, did that remind you, or did that bring anything out listening to what he was telling about with his mum?
Yes, absolutely. I know I can't say for sure if it was the same experience, but I can say it sounds relatable, and I'm sorry you experienced that, Michael. I think I think we have come a long way, right? In noticing and identifying where we have come from, where we're triggered, what we need to feel supported and loved by those who we let into our boundaries. And then we also have learned, I hope, to set boundaries with those people that intend to be toxic. And yeah, that's what I've taken away from this. And then I appreciate all of you feeling willing to be vulnerable and share your stories, because this is the work that helps other people to grow and to get stronger in sharing that. So thank you.
And that's something we want to do. Like, you know, not every show is going to be explosive. Not every show is going to be fun. Not every show is going to be naughty. It's going to be sometimes personal, and people go away and go, wow. But I want to leave on a positive note, if I can. I'm going to ask each of you something powerful about yourself. What do you love about yourself that is powerful and makes you feel like you have got your power back, and it makes you feel really good about yourself? I'm going to come to Michael first. What is something that you feel is powerful and makes you feel good?
Oh no, just my, you know, a lot of people don't see it, but you know, I have a big caring heart, and I try to look after a lot of people, even whatever. And I have found the things that I want to do nowadays, like come on, Wicked Women, as one of the male advisor, or whatever you want, whatever you want to call us, male input, you know, and you know, I only do the things I enjoy now, and I work on my time and my schedule. And like I said, you know, and I wrote down here, words are weapon, and a lot of people don't realize that. And the deeper I go into abnormal psychology, the more I see how words and different things affect different people. And you know, I just try to be positive, and if we can reach out with any of our stories, you know, and help one person, I figure that'd be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. Jason, what about you? What makes you feel pretty powerful?
Is this thing still coming in broken?
Yeah.
The fact that I don't have to check my underwear label for my name to remember my name. What makes me feel powerful? Honestly, right now, the thing that kind of comes to mind is knowing that I have the capability, having been restricted in recent past from doing things or pursuing things that would ultimately lead to long-term goals. And once again, broken record, last relationship, sorry. I you know, taking this position outside of St. Louis that I'll be going to in May. I was with someone that, you know, if you even brought up the idea of, hey, there's a position with better pay, non-deployable, you know, all of these benefits that are good for building stability, both in the near term and in the long term, because, you know, going from a GS11 to a GS12 pay scale, your retirement is going to be better. all of these various things like that. And there were several opportunities that came up during that relationship where, it was, hey, if I take this position and I'm gone for a year in Turkey at Incirlik, I'll come back as a GS-12 and I get a $10,000 signing bonus. So we can put that towards, your son's medical bills. We could put that towards these things. We can actually start building towards future things. But it was, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing a long-term relationship. I've already talked to you about this, so if he even brought up the idea, so now I guess I feel powerful in the fact that, you know what, I can do what I need to do to ensure that I'm able to pursue the things not only that I want to pursue, but, in future long-term relationship type situations, things that will better support and bolster that to be successful. Because, hey, how much you're making at the end of retirement, which, I actually am not that far off from it, it impacts what you're going to be able to do and how you're going to be able to enjoy that part of life, that phase of life, and quality of life in that. And that's important to me. It's looking at the 300-yard target rather than sitting there looking at the 50-yard fast Freddy pop-up. Being able to do that and not be judged or rated or thought less of, or feel pressured to not pursue things for the good of the whole. So that. It's actually, yeah.
So that's
Makes
making
me
you
feel pretty powerful.
like,
I mean, it's terrifying, the fact that I'm picking up and I'm heading to St. Louis, which, I lived in Missouri before I moved out here. So that doesn't terrify me. It's all of the change and all of the things that have to be done. It's like, oh God, that's not terrifying.
Change is scary. I mean, change is scary, but
being able to face it, that's a big thing.
I know, Sabrina, you made a big decision recently, which was going to change your life. And you suddenly went, no, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's completely changed what path you're going to go down. How are you feeling now about that's quite a powerful thing. What are you feeling strong about right now?
It's so funny you brought that up, Wendy, because I think you read my mind. I was hearing JP's story. It was really was really triggering those thoughts about my most recent experience of having to make a decision about to move to London or not. I was in the works of pursuing a relationship with somebody that I met there last summer, and they were in the middle of getting divorced. And so the deal we had was that I would move to London so long that his divorce was finalized. And the end of the year came around and it wasn't. And I said, okay, well then that's the case. I'm going to stay right here. And about 3 days ago, I got the word that, you know what, I don't think this is ever going to really work out for the long haul. So it released me, it freed me up to feel again more back in control of where I want to go with my life and my career. Because I was going to not give up, but I was going to really have to go through a lot to move from the United States to the UK in order to make that happen. And now I have the freedom and the power to do what I want, and I love it.
Is there a sadness, obviously, that you're not going to come here, because that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Like Jason talks about.
Oh, of course. I was really looking forward to pursuing this relationship with this person. Everything was really lining up for us in terms of our values, what we want out of a relationship. It felt like it could be a long-term relationship for sure. And of course, I was going to maybe spend some time getting to hang out with Wendy, and I was really looking forward to that. But unfortunately, I had to let this go, despite how much I I wanted it. It was in my heart. I made up my mind. I was telling everybody. That's the hardest part, is when you tell everybody about it and you
Yeah.
get all excited and you have all these plans in place, and then you have to go, yeah, had to change my mind. And
I didn't say a thing until I got my offer letter, because that exact thing right there. You put it out there, and then all of a sudden you have to change it. The why aren't you gone? Where are you?
I hate that feeling. I hate it, but I've bounced back from, I've essentially, in the past, I probably would be crying today still about the fact that it didn't work out. And, there's something wrong with me. I'm not worth getting this divorce finished for, whatever. Right. And in fact, I think I spent one day crying about it, and now I'm good. Like, I've been good since.
That's I mean, when you told me what happened, I was like, wow, because I knew how much you were changing your whole life. And it's the same as me in some ways. I don't put out so much of my stuff anymore, because what are you doing this or are you doing that? Because at the end of the day, I feel really powerful. And I'll share my story before I go to Tracy and Val, but like, do I feel powerful in my life? Not really. Not right now. I don't. I feel confident in lots of areas, but not powerful like I once did, because things have happened in my life that have perhaps broken me at the moment emotionally. And the Wendy that I was has kind of taken a step back, and there's this other Wendy, and I can put on a very good face and mask it, and you'll think that I'm absolutely fine. Unless you know me well, then you'll go, I can see exactly what's going on underneath. Reclaim your power, Wendy. But I am in certain situations in my life where, time will make that happen. I will make that happen. I'm actually making a decision coming up to do that, and when I confirmed it and done everything, people will know. But at the moment, it's like, for me, my power stands in the fact that everything I've been through, everything I've experienced, and where I am now, if I can make a difference in someone's life, that's what makes me powerful. Not because I'm a great person, I'm powerful, but it makes me feel like it was for a reason. It was some reason. Everything I went through that actually makes a difference. So that makes me feel a lot better. But I wish I could say I feel more like Superwoman underneath my top. Tracy, coming to you, my love. How about you? Where are you feeling powerful?
You probably best of all know that I've just taken my power back after being disrespected for an awful long time.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into detail. Something that I never thought I could actually step out of. Yeah, I decided enough was enough. I've got to be careful how much I say. I mean, you know. How
do you feel now that you've done that? How are you feeling in yourself?
Really
Does it
good.
make you feel
Really good. Yeah, really good. I'm also going through a career change at the moment as well, which is something I didn't think I'd do. I kind of got to the top of my game in my normal career, and decided if I don't change my career now to something that I've always wanted to do, I'm never going to do it. So actually I'm in the process of switching careers as well. So I would say that both emotionally and in my everyday life, then I've definitely grabbed my power back and stopped just sitting back and thinking this is how my life needs to be. I've gone, no, I don't like my life as it is. It needs to change. So it has. So it's good.
Fantastic. And the lovely Val, who's been last but not least on the list. What is it in your life that makes you feel powerful, woman?
I don't think I necessarily feel powerful. I think I feel more confident than I have ever before. I don't know if that comes with age a lot of times. I know that I can get through a whole lot of things because I have already gotten through a whole lot of things. So I think that gives me a lot of confidence knowing, things can't be, that bad. I've gotten through a whole lot and made it. And, you know, I got myself back. Maybe that's the most powerful thing. I did finally get myself back. And, you know, I think we all wear masks at some time, but I try not to wear it as much as I used to. Because I like who I am now more than I ever did. So I don't feel the need to wear one as much as I used to.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
I understand,
You
because
know.
for me, my mask is so I don't go emotional. My mask is so I don't go into that dark side, that you know, so my mask is like to contain that, you know, where before, you know, I didn't need to do that. So I know what you're saying.
But see, and I used to do that as well, but only because I didn't want someone else to see who I really was. And now I like who I am, so I don't care if anybody sees it. It doesn't bother me. You know, I don't think I'm to the point where I'm just going to say whatever pops in my mind. You know, I do have a little self-control, but, you know, I'm not afraid to show people who I really am because I'm okay with me, if that makes sense.
I think it's wonderful to listen to all of you guys, and Val, you know, Val and I are so grateful that you come on here and you share your story and your time with us, because time is very precious, and we understand that. I would also say as well that you have to be yourself, because if you can't be yourself, who can you be? But sometimes it's very difficult to be yourself, especially when you're going through stuff in your life that you're trying to process and deal with, and you may not be there yet. And I think for me personally, that's where I am. It's like I now find myself in a position, where am I going? Who am I? What road am I on? And I feel in some ways lost. But I also have this confidence side to me that says, I can do this. I've got all this experience of everything I've been through and everything I've, you know, felt and done. And there's this other little voice, like Scotty talks about, you know, being that 5-year-old. I still think in all of us, as you know, we know, there's that little person that turns around and says, yes, but I still need that boost of confidence to do certain things. So congratulations to Jason, who's made that big decision to leave and start his life, because, you know, at any age it isn't easy, but he's taken his power and he's doing it. And to Sabrina, because I know how much she wanted to do that, and I know it you know, she was really, when she told me, I was like, oh my God, no. And, you know, and Michael seems to be very much in his, you know, I'm comfortable in my power and with my life. And yes, there are things I want to change or whatever, but I'm comfortable finally after I'm here. And Tracy's on that edge of like, it's all going to happen. You know, she's about to take the leap any moment, and the new careers come in and she's taking back her power. And that's amazing. And Val, you know, she said, it's powerful being yourself, you know, and standing in your power. And any day now, for me, any day now. I just, you know, Val, is there anything you want to end with before we go?
I mean, other than, you know, I think we're all powerful in our own right. You may not see it, but other people might, and you might inspire them a little bit to kind of come out from under that mask.
Yeah, any day. Before we end the show completely, I want to remind everybody, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Scotty Roberts has the Intrepid Radio Show on YouTube, and also his Facebook, where you can find him under Scotty Roberts. Also, KB Kenny Ballos as the coffee castle by the roadside.
Morning coffee with KB.
That's the one. Monday through to Friday on Facebook, and you'll find all that info on his page. You can look for Kenny Ballas. Wicked Women will be back next Sunday at the same time, 10 o'clock. I'm so glad that we've got new blood as well. Lovely ladies. I hope Tracy and Sabrina, you will come and join us again. We would love you to come back. And join us. And I know next week the lovely Caitlin returns for the Canadian Influence comes back next week. So that would be fantastic to have her back here, because she's always a hit when she comes in. For me, I should be back on Tuesday with Robertson with my podcaster hubby, Scotty Roberts, at 10 o'clock UK time, and 4 and 5 ET and CT, which way it goes.
Here.
And I'll also be a year older because it is my birthday on Tuesday. So I'm enjoying.
2027, was it?
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. People, 28.
And Myths, Legends, and the Paranormal will be back also.
I refuse to accept I'm going to be 41 in a couple of weeks. So
yes, Val, your show, like, it's coming in February, isn't it?
February the 3rd. Myths, Legends, and Paranormal will be back on Facebook Live.
That would be wonderful. Or you could do it through StreamYard if you wanted to, and use.
Hey, I'm working on all that. Right now, it's just Facebook Live.
If you really wanted to be brave, you could use the Wicked Women platform and do it through there. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone. And for everyone, sorry, Holy Ghost, we're actually literally finishing up here, but thank you to everybody that came on tonight for sharing your story. I'm just checking. I've got a little thing here just to say thank you so much. In the meantime, if you guys just want to hang on just while I shut the show down, I'm trying to find the music. Here it is. Thanks ever so much. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you next week. Bye from me, and bye from the lovely Val.